Hi, my dear Astro family. Today I wanted to make a video about the spring equinox because, well, this is a very important astrological event. Basically, what any type of equinox is used for is to give some mundane forecast for what to expect in the next 1 year, or specifically speaking, 3 months really. So the spring equinox is a marker of a beginning of the new year. Basically, it's an astrological fresh start. And this is when the sun actually starts gaining more light. Now, I would like to mention that if you believe that we've had a very tough ride so far in the recent month and probably years, then I would like you to prepare that. I think it was just an introduction of what else could be coming. So I'm kind of seeing some very tough energies in this spring equinox chart, and then I thought I would break it down for you. So firstly, what is spring? Spring is about fresh start, something to do with new love. Flowers start blooming, and we kind of reminded that the new beginnings afoot. Now, in Egypt, actually, they celebrated the resurrection of their god Osiris, and it was also the return of their spring god as well. And this was very much to do with fertilization. So we're talking about the eggs, and which is very Easter related. So it really talks about the birth, the new life overall. And even the Egyptians, they used the calendar around the sun's path, which we call in astrology as the hero's journey. Now, I did mention this before already, but the March full moon in 2022 occurs very shortly before the spring equinox. So therefore, this lunation is something very much about an ending, and it really shows how important the next few months is going to be, because the full moon and the spring equinox almost happens on the same day. Now, this lunation is also called as the warm moon, which is very much of a potential for rebirth and regeneration, as well as something to do with becoming, in a sense, a butterfly overall. So the spring equinox, which we also call it as the vernal equinox, is when the sun is actually crossing the equator and begins moving north in the northern hemisphere. And it kind of, what it indicates is that it starts gaining more light. And on the very same day, the light is very, very balanced. So if you actually missed your New Year's resolution, for instance, then you can use this day, which is the 20th of March, but in Sydney, it's going to be happening on the 21st, early very morning, sometimes around 2-3 a.m. actually. Now, the equinox actually happens twice a year. We've got the spring one, and then we've got the autumn equinox, which we call as the fall equinox also. And different cultures celebrate it in a different way. You can make your little altar if you want, and you can set your intentions. I let you Google that how to do if that's something you are interested in. So basically, the equinox is when the sun enters a sign of Eris. Eris and Libra is something called with the world axis. So it's kind of like showing us how the world is going to be shifting. Now, Eris is a fire sign. It's a cardinal sign. So it does talk about some actions, and it does mention to us something to do with the initiation overall. So kind of like when things are kind of set on fire, in a sense. By the way, the word equinox comes from Latin, and it means equality of night and day. So this is the reason why at the moment of the equinox kind of happening, the sun is directly above the hemisphere, and both halves of the earth are receiving equally the rays of the sun. So it kind of like, from a spiritual perspective, it indicates to us that the spiritual and the physical world somehow the veil between them two is getting thinner and thinner. And then in that moment, in that 1 second moment, it's kind of like disappearing completely. So it's a lot easier to get any type of messages, for instance, or information from the gods, as well as from your higher self. So that's the reason why it's worth actually doing a little bit of a chanting, for instance, if that's something you are into. So this spring equinox is going to be happening on 20th of March, 3:34 p.m. London Greenwich time. So you might want to be looking up when it happens in your country. But I'm going to use the London Greenwich chart because basically there's the universal time. So what we see here in this chart is that we've got a Virgo rising sign. And Virgo is all about service to others. It's something to do with medical conditions, as well as how analytic we become overall. And you can also see that Moon is actually on 29 degree on an analytic degree. Now, I want to definitely speak about that Moon because it looks very prominent. Firstly, Moon is on 29 degree of Libra, which is actually a burnt road for the Moon. One of the most difficult position between 15 Libra to 15 Scorpio to have the Moon there. And it's kind of like doubled with the 29 degree element as well, because that's an analytic degree, which is kind of showing us that something is about to close and end, and something new will be starting. So this 29 degree element is something to do with being frustrated. On one hand, any planet being on 29 degree is risky because they are not making any more applying aspect, meaning that they are on the borderline and they don't know how to actually cross over in a sense. Now, Moon in the mundane chart is actually representing the people. And then it's squaring Pluto, Pluto is about domination. It kind of indicates the control. So it's very possible that, let's say Pluto in Capricorn, the government wants to somehow control the people. And Libra is about peace, but also it's about war as well at the same time. And the fact that this Moon is being opposed by an asteroid called Eris, which is the dwarf planet of discord. Basically, the story behind her is that she actually wasn't invited to a very important wedding, so she decided to cause some chaos, and she threw in a golden apple so that they can find the prettiest woman ever. So Eris somehow tells us that whether we are going to be heard, it's very much about equality overall. She is about that everyone deserves to be heard, to be understood. Everyone has got the right to kind of exist overall. So typically, Eris is a volatile energy. And I kind of believe that this is going to be talking about protests and demonstrations overall, which we are about to see in the next 13 weeks overall. But another thing which I'm really much seeing here is that it's overall a T-square between Pluto, Moon, and Eris. Now, this Pluto-Eris square has been going on for a while. And I think it's very much about kind of like unveiling some of the corruption, what is going on in the world. And it really depends who is going to win here, whether Eris is going to be strong enough to kind of stand up and fight for their primary needs, because it's in the sign of Aries, right? And that talks about primary needs and initiations. But sometimes Aries gets very tired. It has got so much enthusiasm going on, and then overall it starts slowing down. Now, another important thing which we should be looking at, plenty of people believe that we should be looking at the sun, but that's not necessarily the case, because the sun is always going to be around the 20th of March in the sign of Aries, but we should be looking at its dispositor, which is actually Mars. Now, what you see about this Mars is that Mars and Venus are still in conjunction and actually squaring Uranus. Mars is on 10 degrees, Venus is on 13. You can see that Uranus is on 12 degrees. So basically, Uranus is actually collecting the light between them two. Now, we know what happened during the Mars-Venus conjunction back when it started in the middle of February. Straight after, there was a war between Ukraine there is a war between Ukraine and Russia, and which probably got a little bit escalated after the 6th of March. I did speak about this potential war in a previous video before, at the beginning of February, and unfortunately I was right. But I kind of believe that the fact that Uranus is collecting the light, and you can see that this is happening actually in the 9th house, which is very much about international matters, I kind of believe that someone else will get involved out of all the countries. Now, Mars and Uranus square is a very much about disruption, kind of like typically astrological researches show that when Uranus and Mars somehow meeting, we should be always expecting some volcano eruption or eruptions or earthquakes and so forth. But earthquake, whether it is a from an environmental point of view, or actually something blows out of the proportion type of topic, we will see how that plays out, but definitely it's not looking too peaceful. I did speak about the Venus-Mars conjunction a couple of months ago, and then I kind of looked at the 32-year cycle, and then I saw that 1989, 1990 kind of repetition when Russia was very much involved in that story anyway. But also because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, in the 9th house, this could really talk about some international banking or even something to do with the foreign currencies overall. So probably we're going to see a little bit of a volatile market. And that's just a tip for the investors. Of course, I kind of believe that the digital currency is somehow on the way. So if you see any potential of investing in those, in the long run, it might be bringing you something great overall. But going back to the Pluto, Moon, and Eris T-square, it clearly shows some type of resistance for people who want to be people who want to be kind of opposing against that control, what is going on. Now, we also see that the Sun and the Moon are in conjunction. So clearly, the Moon is not really supported here. And in conjunction is a 150-degree aspect. Now, because the Sun is representing something to do with transformation in the 8th house, but it also could talk about death. And 3rd house is also, to a certain extent, death. For me, the 3rd house is something to do with incarnation. Why is that? Because that's the 8th from the 8th. So that kind of shows to me that there is going to be something happening. A politician or an important person will be dying, probably somehow being in the crossfire of all the situation, what is going on. You can also see that the North Node is actually conjuncting the midheaven, and the midheaven always represents the collective at large. And North Node is something to do with karma. So there is some new karmic type of things going on in the horizon. And because I set the chart for London, I kind of believe that it is somehow drawing the attention to the royal family. Probably the Queen is going to be quite a big topic in the next 13 months, 12 months or 13 weeks. I kind of believe that there might be some shifts going on in England, which is going to be quite shocking and unexpected overall, because we've got Uranus also being a part of this whole story. So I'm expecting some shocking announcement overall. By the way, the Uranus and the Mars exact square is going to be between the 22nd to the 25th of March. So I kind of believe that the Ukrainian-Russian story is going to escalate around that time, or at least that's when some earthly event is going to be happening, which might be devastating for plenty. Now, I read recently something, and then I started looking into, and what I read was that the last 2 years, all the traditional planets have been contained within the arc of 180 degree, bounded by the lunar nodes. And they did a little bit of a research, a planetary research, and it kind of indicates that a war type of related matters happen around those times, or even pandemics. Now, we are having both of them really at this time. Now, what's good to see is that on 22nd of April, this is going to break, and finally a planet will be stepping out of this. So hopefully that is going to bring us a little bit of a cosmic release overall. Now, I did look at some world chart as well, and then I saw that before actually we go into that, speaking about the war, you know, there are different dates there. So there is the 5:55, there is a 5 a.m. one, local time on the 24th, and hopefully the 5 a.m. is not the right time, because that would be showing us a good 5-6 year kind of really extreme situation there also. And I recently looked at Zelensky's chart as well, and his progress chart suggests that he is just about to reach some of the peak of his life, and that's going to be happening in 3-4 years time. And that 3-4 year time is actually happening at the same time when he's going to be having the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on 0 degree of Eris. So I kind of believe that is still political type of stuff going on by 2026, 27 going on between Russia and Ukraine also. And probably because currently we have got this Saturn and Neptune semi-sextile going on between, between Saturn and Neptune, and it's gonna get exact on 2022 May. What I'm expecting to see there is some political instability in Russia. So anyway, I don't even want to say what I'm hoping, but kind of an economic little crisis situation I kind of see there happening. By the way, this Equinox chart, the sun is falling onto the descendant of Moscow, and Neptune is actually on the descendant of Ukraine. So it's very interesting to see these two nations. So I think this political meta between them two is going to be a little bit longer than we expect. Now, when I looked at the event chart, which I prepared for you, I kind of saw there an 18-week or 18-month period, which I mentioned. So now looking into it a little bit deeper, I'm not too sure about the 18 weeks period. Maybe it's going to be the 18-month, but let's see what is happening. So also, what I've seen here is that the moon is actually in conjunction to a fertility goddess called Humeya. Now, I did speak about Humeya before, so if you're interested, just check it up on my YouTube channel. But Humeya is the goddess of childbirth and fertility in Hawaiian mythology. So basically, she is famous for giving birth from different parts of her body, and she has got the ability to take on any type of forms, and she experienced plenty of rebirth. Now, in conjunction to moon, it kind of indicates that somehow the earth is going to get reborn, or people are going to get reborn. And I'm really hoping that the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction is really talking about the rebirth of people overall, because we need a huge awakening. I also see that Saturn is actually squaring the North Node in this chart. Saturn is still in the sign of Aquarius on 20 degrees. The North Node is on 24. So it's an applying aspect, actually. And Saturn in Aquarius is very much about that social distancing type of element. We had plenty of social distancing. In my opinion, this time around, this will be more about the social distancing between countries and kind of like creating a structure, new social rules, which people are probably not gonna like overall. And I kind of believe this is gonna be affecting the travel anyway, because Saturn and the Uranus ongoing square, which is almost getting exact at the end of the year again, but it doesn't. So there is gonna be some plans around travel modifications overall. So guys, this is kind of like my intake very briefly on the spring equinox. Looks challenging. And I already made a little bit of a hint when I made the new moon video. That it's going to be a challenging time. And then I wanted to just a little bit break it down more for you, because I think it's important that we get ready. And I'm aware that some people are not going to like my interpretation, of course. But if you look at this chart and then you see that Mercury, which is the chart ruler, is actually in detriment and fall in the 7th house, and having Jupiter right next to it, Jupiter really magnifies. And the 7th house is something to do with conflicts, but also agreements also. Now, because Mercury is not necessarily in a good position or good sign, I don't think it really talks about the agreements. Of course, Jupiter and Neptune will be trying to mitigate the circumstances and will be trying to kind of, you know, overpower the collective energy. But let's see who is going to be weaker there. I kind of believe that Mercury, because it does talk about social media to a certain extent, especially in the sign of Pisces, there might be some regulations around that, or kind of like social silencing also. The only positive thing which I see in this chart, by the way, is the Sun and part of Fortune conjunction. So there is an element of a luck in this whole story. But I think it's going to be in the long run, because it's the 8th house and that's a fixed house. So to see the better manifestation of all these, it might take a little bit of a time. So yeah, so guys, this is pretty much my intake on the spring equinox. Let me know how you kind of feel about the whole situation. I hope I did not upset anyone. I just wanted to really share what I'm kind of seeing here. Yeah, overall. So see you very shortly. Bye-bye.